also, as parents, I think we are trying to navigate our own, oh my gosh, how do we get through these uncertain days and weeks? I don't have childcare, or,
Yeah.
you don't have a house.
From the newsroom to the nursery.
We're juggling a demanding career on live TV with the demands of motherhood.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Karen.
They are AnchorMoms.
Hey friends, welcome to another episode of AnchorMoms, the podcast. Life remains very difficult here in Western North Carolina. It's hard to, if you don't live here, I have a feeling, although I have not watched a stitch of television outside of obviously News 13, I have a funny feeling that much of the world has moved on here, but not, things sort of remain status quo here in Asheville. Yeah.
When Milton hit, right? Like last week, Milton hit Florida, and a lot of folks were like, oh, great. Now people are going to forget about us and move on to the next.
Mm-hmm. I don't get, certainly FEMA is still here. Our emergency responders are still here. I drive to work in the middle of the night and I still see tankers
Crews
on the road. I still see helicopters overhead. So I sense that there are still people here helping. I think it's possible, just like the national spotlight, and this is, we work in news. This is like the news cycle. I totally get it. I this morning, so it's starting to actually feel like fall here in this little portion of the world in which we live. It's been typical of the South in the 70s and the 80s.
It's very hot.
It's been very warm. But this morning, after the show, I went outside and I stepped outside and I was like, it smells like fall. You know the smell of fall? I don't know if it's like the leaves, the air. I don't know. We're about to get a cold patch here. And I had this moment, and I think, again, if you live here or if you've ever lived through a natural disaster like this is probably something you've experienced. I had this moment where I was like, oh my God, it's October. Oh my God, it's fall. Like, oh my, like Halloween. And it's like, it's like you look up and you can't believe that it's, as we're recording this, the middle of October. You sat down, Karen and I anchored together this morning, and you said, I got to get my kids Halloween costumes. I got to get that stuff in order. It's just, until I lived through this, I really didn't understand it. It's like you have zero sense of like time, space, month, because everything is just
comes to a standstill.
It's just a strange feeling.
It is. I said this to you this morning. I opened my planner for the first time since before Helene hit just now. And I was like, oh, wow, 2.5 weeks have gone by. And all appointments have been missed or canceled, or you're just in this weird phase. I found an Easter book one of my kids had. And this is going to sound odd, but I literally had to think, what holiday season are we
near
in?
Easter?
It took me a long time to think about, not even what day is it? Like what part of the year are we in?
I know.
Which sounds so crazy, but I literally was like, wait, what's the next holiday season here? Like where are we in the grand scheme of this year?
I posted something to Instagram earlier this morning. It was like a quote that I saw yesterday that just really resonated with me. And it's basically just like, do all the things now because you think you have time you're going to get around to all of this. But the truth is like, you really aren't promised tomorrow. You don't know. This whole experience has just made me realize like, you just have no idea. And this sounds so fatalistic, and I don't mean it to be, but like, you just don't know what's coming down the pike. I look at my calendar, it's all on my phone. And so we were supposed to have play practice and soccer practice tomorrow. And Thursday, she's supposed to have gymnastics. And last Friday was supposed to be the chili cook-off that she was really looking forward to. And you know what's funny is like, and you can appreciate this if you're a parent, in your head, none of that stuff was stuff that you were actually looking forward to. It was more of like obligations that you needed to check off your calendar. River was looking forward to the chili cook-off, but I was like, I signed up to make a dessert for that chili cook-off. Like, so that week I'm going to like on Tuesday, I'll find the recipe. Wednesday, I'll like bake it. It'll be good for Friday. It's like, and you just realize like none of that even matters anymore. It doesn't even like all of the stuff that you were low key sort of like stressing for and planning for. And like, okay, River's going to, Tuesdays are going to be crazy because River really wants to do this musical. And so she's going to like leave for school at 7:30 and really not be home at our house until at this point, like 7:00 at night. Is that going to be okay for a first grader? Like, it's like laughable now that these were the conversations that we're having in my household because I mean, everything here in Asheville is at a standstill. And and also River has a broken arm, so she will not be participating in any of the soccer or gymnastics, I don't know, the rest of the season, It's just like the stuff you just didn't see coming.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I've had a really hard time getting on social media, and I really for a couple of reasons. First of all, because it's hard and, for Katie and I, who when we're at work, we're just engulfed in this storm, the devastation, the fatalities, all of it. And it's just a lot. But then also you see, and you kind of spoke to this a little bit, you see your friends in other areas who, were posting about
they're going to pumpkin patches.
Well, and for the first couple of days, I feel like a lot of people were so great about saying like, this is a big deal in Asheville. Like, let's support them. So many friends of ours and family members, have donated and really been amazing in all of this. But then you realize that as it should, their lives are going on and ours are kind of still a little bit stuck. And it's almost like a weird, like, wait, so things are still happening outside of Asheville? Like birthday parties and events and travel and like people are still like doing normal things. It's kind of a weird
space to be in.
Yeah.
It's a strange life to live. You're reminding me that we need to give folks an update on schools and where we're living. River goes to a very small Catholic private school in the city of Asheville. If you're Catholic, you'll appreciate this. It's all where Western North Carolina is in the the Charlotte diocese. So they're moving. This is great news for us. They are moving River's school to one county over to the other little private school there. So River starts school. We're recording this on a Monday. She starts school on Wednesday because her school still does not have water. Her school is just up the street from where we live in Asheville. And I don't say this lightly because it's awesome that she's going back to school, but it is complicated because it's like a whole nother school, a whole nother like, what time does the school start? What is car line? Like, it's like sort of like, it's still very jarring, but I'm still very thankful that River is able to go back to school. A lot of the counties surrounding Western North Carolina, many of those kids are going back to school this week. However, in Buncombe County and Asheville, that's the hardest hit areas. Buncombe County has no timeline. They have I think I read this morning, some 22,000 students, no timeline for when these kids will go back to school. Karen's kids go to Asheville City schools and they have given you a tentative start date.
Yeah, a couple of weeks from now at the end of October, but that is very much, I think, just a guess. They are trying to do some in person, a couple of hours a day. For the kids to come in. And I think they will try to start rolling out some remote learning. And that's another big question. I think a lot of people who aren't in Asheville are like, why can't they just do remote learning? We've all been through COVID.
There's no internet.
There's no internet still. There's still no Wi-Fi. I mean, even cell service is still so spotty, which is kind of astounding to us here who are still like, how are we still dealing with this? But when you see the lines that have come down and kind of the state of our neighborhoods, it makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, so we're still, our children are still, can't watch TV,
right?
Can't do anything on an iPad, can't really do anything.
And it's
on a device.
in 2024, not having internet is it's definitely a first world problem, but it's a problem. But even more importantly, many folks within Buncombe County do not have water, and that is
Right.
crippling. That's why these schools are unable to open because they don't have water. And the city schools are talking about drilling wells at these
They're
schools,
planning to drill a well in every single
which
of the
is
8 Asheville City schools.
wild.
Yeah, I mean, our hospital drilled a well.
Is that true? I'm still,
Mhm.
I have
I
yet to
think
see
it
that like
is.
confirmed. I feel like I've seen that back and forth. It's been hard to get information just because there's no cell phone service, no cell service. It's like hard to figure out. It's just the information kind of trickles here. It's kind of slow. It's slow going.
And I think it's hard for us as journalists. We want to be able to say to people, "Oh yeah, we got the info. Here it is," and it's not as simple as that right now.
It's not as simple as that. So many people are starting to get power back. I know. So we're staying in a county south of Asheville that has water and power. Brian and I in River because our house is uninhabitable. We had a tree fall on it. We've been going back to that house. That neighborhood. We've been going back to that house just to do some work. Our neighborhood just got power back Saturday, and it's still very spotty. No cell phone service and no water there. No water, which it's it's hard to live without clean water.
2.5 weeks in, and people are still showering at the station regularly here because where our station is in South Asheville, we do, of course, have water and power and all the things here in our building. There are still pillows and blankets and beds. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable to think about the fact that this has lasted so long and could last a lot longer. I mean, it could be weeks before the majority of the city of Asheville has water, and they are working just as quickly as they can. But I mean, I don't think that you can truly understand how much damage was done to our water system, and precautions that they'd put in place, protections that they thought no storm could ever mess with this, wiped away.
Yeah.
Pipes buried 25 feet underwater, gone.
Right. Yeah. FEMA is here. There are still people missing. There's still people missing in this storm. So it's a process.
It is. And I think there's a lot of, I think Asheville City, probably has the resources and will bounce back okay, even though there's a lot of folks still struggling here. But I really am now starting to worry even more about these smaller outlying rural communities that were really devastated and just have a couple hundred people in them.
Yeah.
And how are they going to get back on their feet? So yeah, this leads us right into our first article.
It does,
so
yes.
we'll get to this. For some children, Hurricane Helene's ruin could take years to get over. School closures and traumatic experiences could affect children long after schools reopen. Experts worry that some similar scenarios are happening more frequently because of climate change.
Right. We're getting more storms, more frequent storms and stronger storms. And every time, this is like what the learning lesson has been for those of us here, at least for me in Western North Carolina. I have never lived through a natural disaster, and I cannot believe every corner of your life how much it touches. So if we have more and more of these storms, places that usually are not impacted, it means schools and kids and, after school programs and, food banks, like all those things that sort of keep a community running. The tentacles of it it's ginormous. It's enormous.
Nobody thought a hurricane would hit this far inland here in the mountains.
Yeah.
The article talks about, as we've said, all the many children who are without school and will be without school for quite some time. And it talks about how this really impacts the students. Of course, there's the loss of learning, but also
This is from the New York Times. Did we say this?
I don't know.
It's from New York Times. Yeah. Well, it's just important that like it's as somebody who lives here in Asheville,
right?
It's wild to see the New York Times writing articles about your school system.
Our tiny little 4,000 student Asheville school system.
Yeah.
But yeah, it talks about how an estimated 50,000 students did not return to their classroom for the entire year post Katrina. So there's, talking about the similarities in comparison with Katrina and just how devastating that was. Research has shown that some students in early grades fall behind a whole year academically, but also there's the signs of long-lasting trauma, emotional trauma, and also anxiety over storms. You know, we've talked about this. I think River and several of my children are very anxious, still talking about, are we safe? Are we okay? Is another storm going to hit? So it's really tricky to navigate all this. Also, as parents, I think we are trying to navigate our own, oh my gosh, how do we get through these uncertain days and weeks? I don't have childcare, or, you don't have a house, like, those things. It's just really tricky. And then you're trying to make sure you're taking care of their needs and making sure they're okay, because it's a lot for kids.
We're so cranky in my house. Yesterday was Sunday, and nobody is sleeping well. We're in this house that we're not used to. Our pets, this sounds, if you're a pet owner, you can appreciate this. Our dog and our cat are so discombobulated that at night they are roaming around. We're in this little house, keeping everybody up at night because they're displaced, they're stressed. Nobody is sleeping. Yesterday, we were in Target of all places, and Brian and I, River was just not doing anything that a kid wouldn't normally do. And Brian really he didn't yell at her, but he was stern. And I looked at River and I was like, hey, and he was like, we're just all so tired. I'm like, we're so tired. I'm freaking stressed. And Brian is freaking stressed. We're trying to navigate this insurance system. It's just a lot. We're trying to navigate when and how to make our house livable again. And I mean, I said this so River has seen the destruction at our house, the trees, her playhouse is destroyed at our house, her swing set, the kitchen, the back of the house. And she is adamant that she does not want to go back to our house. And so far, Brian and I have been able to sort of navigate. We did a cleanup day at our house on Saturday, and we've been able to leave her with friends or leave her with our sweet nanny. But at some point, it's we're going to have to bite the bullet, and you're going to have to go, because I'm starting to get concerned. You do know that you're going to have to go back. You're going to have to live in this house again. And it's just, you don't know what to say to her, because I don't want to go back there either. I sometimes say to her, I don't blame you. It's scary. Although I got to say now, this is what I keep trying to say to her. We've gotten the tree out of the house. We've plywooded it up. It's not as scary. And it feels good to go back and be all right, progress is being made. So yeah, I don't know what the long-term impact is going to be for her. I don't know.
Yeah. It's really hard. I wonder for Sam, who's 2, he's every noise outside, is that thunder? Is that another storm? But I don't think he'll really remember it. Bennett last night, in fact, when I was putting her to bed, said, Mom, I think that the storm is one of those memories that I'm going to have forever.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a really big memory for me. And, it's I'm sure it is, honey. I don't know how this isn't a big memory when you're almost 6 and, this big crazy thing happens to our lives. I think it's just both, right? Trying to navigate, how do we make sure that they have a schedule? And, look, at this point, I'm not even thinking about, okay, should they be, what educational things they should, we're not even there yet. We don't have internet. We can't do any of that. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of there's so much else going on that, just play. Yeah. Just do whatever you can to keep yourselves happy.
Get through the day.
Yeah.
Get through the day.
But there is a chance that particularly our school system could be a month or 2 before they go back. And a lot of families are choosing to transfer to other school systems. So that's a tough thing. Do you do that? Is that even more traumatic for your kids to then transfer to a new school and they don't know anybody and they don't know the teachers? And I don't know. It's really tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this article talks about, it's funny, the superintendent of the of Asheville Public Schools is quoted in here saying that, we really realized during the pandemic how critical the role of school is in child development, not just academics, but just what we were talking about, the musical practice
Mhm.
and the sports practices and just, the
Everything.
being on teams, having a structure, like
Mhm.
it's just the whole part of it. That's what kids
Mhm.
thrive on. So, and it's scary. I think the point of all of this is whether you live in Western North Carolina or not, and you're experiencing this or not, that
It's happening more.
What's happening more because
Mhm.
of climate change. We're seeing these storms and you think you're safe in the mountains of Western North Carolina and you're not immune to it. You're
Mhm.
not immune. Like we were not immune to it, but I think we thought we were.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people thought we were. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, maybe the answer is we've learned a lot from the pandemic. And I do think I've seen a lot of what's coming out from the schools is what they've learned from the pandemic. In fact, like I think Asheville City Schools and Buncombe County Schools, they are going to do some of those extracurricular activities, like
Mhm.
host like the baseball games and the softball games because they recognize that like there's something we have to do something. Whereas like during the pandemic, of course, you
Mhm.
couldn't do a lot of that.
I know it's so interesting to think about how it's similar yet different from the pandemic and just how they kind of compare. I did read an article and feel terrible. If you were a freshman in high school for the pandemic, you're a senior in high school dealing with this. Yeah. So, that's just tough for those folks.
Just so hard.
Yeah. It's just a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a mums this week and Karen and I were like, oh gosh, should we have like our mums the word segment? Should we have our win of the week segment? But I think we should. And I think we came up
Mhm.
with some. And listen, you still have to go about your life. So you might still need some things to enjoy.
Mhm.
Hence the mums the word. So this is a podcast. I don't have really great cell service at the house that I'm staying at. So I've been downloading it. So
Mhm.
pro tip there. And then I listen to it. I listen to it at work as well. So it's called Ghost Story. It's very appropriate for this time of year. It's from Wandery. And it just won, but the things that piqued my interest about it just won Best Documentary Podcast from the Ambies here in 2024. And Apple Podcast named it a series essential. So I'm not a big like ghost story woo-woo person. But this one is just so good. It's hosted by a journalist who says he doesn't believe in ghosts. But he starts to he's British and he starts to connect the pieces. This is a crazy story. I'll just give you the quick synopsis. He says weird things happened in his bedroom when he was a teenager growing up. And then he met his wife at university. And when his wife's family came to visit his house for the first time, like his childhood home, they realized that the house next door was the house where his future wife's great-grandmother was murdered.
Ooh.
And so it's like there's like two pieces to this story. Historically, this family is very interesting. And it's all like very like British and funny and entertaining. And so it's not, I mean, it's a little scary, but it's like more of just, it's almost like the personalities are good in it. Highly recommend Ghost Story from Wandery. You can search it wherever you get your podcasts. I looked around this morning, wherever you get your podcasts. I love it. I'm like on episode 4 or 5 and it's been such a bright spot. You need something to like look forward to. I'm like trying to unpack in this temporary house and I'm listening to it and it's good. It'll get you through the hard times
and if
you
you're
need
here,
something.
you can go to a cell phone spot and download it all.
Right.
And then
go to your nearest FEMA center and download. Right. Exactly. Yep. Okay. So our second article here, this one comes from, we've never had an article here from the Valley Echo. It is a local news site.
Good, though.
I know. And they're a news site that focuses primarily on the eastern part of Buncombe County here. So east of Asheville, which are the communities of Black Mountain, Swannanoa, and Monterey. And I need to tell you, these areas were especially hit hard during Helene. So the author here, this is an opinion piece. It's Fred McCormick. And he just sort of starts out by saying are we okay? And he is realizing that being okay is sort of a relative term right now. Everywhere you go, people are like, are you okay? You're okay. And you're like, yeah,
I guess.
I mean, like, I'm alive. That someone said that to me this weekend. Our neighbors who I hadn't seen. I was like, "Are you doing okay?" He's like, "I mean, we're alive, but all of our stuff, they had the flooding, like everything they own was flooded." And I was like, "Yeah, you're not okay, but you
Right.
are like alive and you're safe and you're
Right,
standing here
right.
talking to me." And so he just sort of talks about what's the best way to help in recovery, and it's maybe just to have grace. He talks about grace was something that like his mom, when you're a kid and you're like, life is so unfair. Jimmy, got 2 pieces of candy and I got like 1 piece of candy. And his mom was like, you just need to have grace about it. And he talks about how, you need to have grace to get through this because some people lost everything. Some people lost a kitchen in the back half of their house. Some people are dealing with, the editor here for this podcast, like had electricity and now doesn't have electricity. And there's something annoying going on with his, electrical box. Everything in life right now in Western North Carolina, like nothing is easy. And like, you just have to sort of, everybody is dealing with something and you just have to give people the grace to get through it. He also just talks about, just the annoying part of life. And when you're trying to get somewhere, when you're trying to drive somewhere here, like there's so many people on the road and a lot of them are FEMA workers, people bringing like water tankers, people bringing infrastructure, things that used to take 5 minutes now take 40 minutes here. And he talks about in this article that you just have to like kind of sort of close your eyes and be like, okay, well, these people who are clogging the roadway are doing something good. They're on their way to something good. And like, that's really the only way to get through it. I shared with Karen, somebody gave River a $30 gift card to Target, which I'll be honest with you, I never go to Target. I always get everything shipped. I use Shipped for Target or delivered to our house. But she really wanted to go and pick out a toy. And Brian and I were like, fine. So yesterday we went. Oh, it's like there's a staging center there in this complex. It was like 30 minutes just to get into the parking lot. It was crazy town in Target. And it was like, you're already so tired and so frazzled that it's like, it's everything you can do not to just like throw up your hands and be like, what the heck,
Yeah, there's a quote in here. He says, "Who am I to complain? My family is safe and my house is still standing. I know people who are not as fortunate. They're just as likely as me to be driving on a heavily trafficked road or waiting for gas in a slow-moving line. While my eyes are typically drawn to the abundant natural beauty around me while driving through these mountains, I began to fixate on the faces of my fellow travelers. I saw despair, desperation, fear, unease, and discomfort."
Yeah.
When as he was talking about just the travel in general and how frustrating it can be. And I think that that's just it. There's everybody right now is going through something. And I don't think anyone is immune to any of this. I think even if, like you said, your house was spared and you had maybe, I guess there were some people in South Asheville who had power and water and internet the whole time. But even still, the restaurants are closed. You probably have friends who are more impacted than you. It's just so far reaching. And it's hard because and I just was talking to another coworker and teared up talking to him because he also lost his house. And, there's part of you that wants to say, I can't complain. I can't. My family's safe. I can't complain. But yes, as you said, we are all going through something really, really difficult. This article says, one thing we can offer each other and ourselves is grace. It might be the biggest thing we can contribute at this moment. This happened to us, not me, not you, not whoever they are. This is our shared burden to bear, even if we didn't ask for or deserve it. And I think that really kind of sums up the fact that we are going through this as a community. The one good thing is, we are just seeing so many people come out of the woodwork to be good neighbors. The restaurants here in the city of Asheville have to go through like a permit process now to open again and sell their food and products again because of just the health inspections, and they want to just make sure everything's safe before they reopen. So a lot of the restaurants are just giving away food.
Yeah. But also, so you can imagine one of our favorite pizza spots just down the road from my house, like Brian and I, it's called 828 Pizza. It's been around for 1,000 years here. We were like, imagine how much money they are losing by the day. They couldn't reopen even if they wanted to, because I'm sure they don't have water. They're right down the road from my house. Just so, as they're giving away food, just imagine. It's like for them, I'm sure this is flashbacks of the pandemic, by the way. Like, just so now they've been closed for 2.5 weeks. Like, just imagine the burden. I know that family, and this is like that's how they make their living.
Sure.
Like, the burden for them. I don't know what the status of their home. Like, I don't even know what the status of like their personal lives are, but I can tell you, like, I'm surely being impacted by their business, and that's just like one example.
Well, we have a really big art scene here in the Asheville area, and there's a River Arts District, and that district, we read on the news this morning, I think it was 500 artists lost everything. All their work, everything they were going to sell.
It's the River Arts District because it's right by the river. So you can imagine.
It just completely washed out.
Our girls go to gymnastics at a place that's on
Riverside Drive.
Riverside Drive. Yeah, thank you. And, they sent out an email like, hey, we're trying, but we lost a lot of stuff, and that's their business. That's their livelihood.
Yeah.
So
that's what, it really is just even more and more, I think about housing. We were already in a housing crisis, and now entire apartment complexes are closing. They're condemned because of the flooding. So
we just haven't even seen, and some of these stories, obviously, as a news station and as journalists, like, are swirling in your mind, but it's like we're not even there yet to start addressing some of this, because like we're still, I think the city and the counties are still trying to address critical needs.
We're still trying to find missing people. We're still trying to get the water back on for literally 100,000 people.
Yeah, and so then it's like, okay, well, once that happens, then we can start to think about like, how do we help these businesses recover? So, hey, we still need help. We have linked a bunch of stuff in our Instagram pages.
We'll continue to put the places, if you're able to donate or want to help, those links in our show notes for this week as well, just in case you missed last week's episode. Oh, and I do have a win. I have a really quick win.
Okay, good.
Just because it's so...
Karen was like, do I have a win? Do I have a win before the show? And I was like, I don't know. If you don't, it's okay.
There's so much, it's tough, as we've said. But we are back in our house after
that's so huge.
2 weeks, I think, I don't even know, of being away. And we have power and water, which we're very lucky for. We don't have internet yet, but that will come whenever it comes. But we also, my sweet mother-in-law is here helping with the kids. We have just, I just can't even describe the number of people who have been so kind. We were able to stay in a friend's house, a friend's parents' house that was being unused, which, when you're traveling with a gang of 6, it's hard to find a place that works for your family. And this was a 3-bedroom house that we could just totally have for ourselves, which was so amazing during this time that was only about an hour and a half away. So that was a huge blessing. And just the number of people who have reached out and supported us, and now we're back home, which feels good. It feels good to be back home.
So nice, yeah.
It's so nice to have help with the kids from my husband's mom. And so, just shout out to all the people who have
stepped up to the plate. And like people who still, people, I think I also posted this on my Instagram page, like my gym came out and helped us do a huge cleanup of our yard, because that's like part of it for us is just like we can't even begin to do any renovations or like get in there until we literally get get the construction debris. So, a company came and like tore out everything, but it's just like in the middle of our yard, like bricks and drywall and cabinets and dishes and wine. I mean, like there's, so somebody came and helped us clear all of that out of the yard and take it to the curb for debris. And like there are people who have like damage as well. I just can't. And it's like, I'm not really one to like ask for help or to, I just never even, I'm kind of a little bit more private. And what was so great is they just were like, we don't care. We're like showing up and we're doing it. And it was like help. We didn't even, it was huge. We spent 4 hours. There was like 12, 15 of us. And I mean, it would have taken Brian and I at least a week, if not longer, Yeah. I'm just so thankful for people who want nothing in return and just are here to help.
I mean, I think that's really the win for all of this, right? Yeah. And I mean, it sounds cheesy, but we are just really seeing the best of people come out. I know you feel this too, Katie, because you have a great neighborhood as well. But like, our neighborhood is just, I mean, neighbors who we've chatted with briefly before, we feel like are now best friends. And what do you need? Do you need a meal? Do you need water? Do you need to come use I have internet in my office down the street. Do you need to come over there to work? I mean, it's just undescribable, the sense of community that you feel when something like this happens.
We're all going to come out of this stronger for sure. It sounds super cliche, but now the bonds we have formed here with our neighbors, with our coworkers, I mean, it's real. It's real.
And if you are a AnchorMoms fan, but do not live in Asheville or are not super interested in the storm, give us some grace here as we just continue.
Give us some grace, right?
To continue to, as our article talked about, as we continue to navigate this. I mean, this is kind of, we can't really see past it right now.
And we can't talk about anything else.
Yeah,
it would be ridiculous for us to even pretend to be able to talk about anything else.
We hope and we think that we will get back to normal, more uplifting, lighthearted, normal, content as usual, typical programming here on AnchorMoms. But for right now, this is just where we are, and this is kind of just all we can do.
All right, bye guys. Thank you for listening.
Have a good week.
AnchorMoms is a Sinclair podcast produced out of WLOS in Asheville. We're your hosts, Katie Killen and Karen Zakalak. AnchorMoms is edited by Matthew Yates.
For more information on the topics discussed in this episode and to stay up to date on future episodes, follow us on Instagram @AnchorMoms.
You can follow AnchorMoms on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Know a parent who could benefit from this week's AnchorMoms episode? Your recommendations help our show to grow, so spread the word.